Salt Lake City had a 17-mile line that took patrons out to the Saltair Pavilion. The line was built in 1891 as the steam-powered Salt Lake and Los Angeles Railway. By 1919, the line was electrified as the Salt Lake, Garfield, and Western Railway. The Saltair Pavilion, sometimes called the Coney Island of the West, was located out in the water of the Great Salt Lake and accessed by a rail trestle. It was a large entertainment complex built by the LDS church interests to provide citizens with wholesome entertainment and recreation. The rail line was arrow straight, with 3 city stops and 1 at the west end for pavilion riders. Traffic to the Saltair was so heavy in the early days, the railroad had plans to double-track the system to improve service. In this view, the wide spacing of the poles shows those unfulfilled plans. 6 1500-volt DC Interurban cars built by McGuire Cummings made up the powered car fleet. Each of these could pull several full trailer cars since the track was level and straight. In the early days, cars were painted dark green with gold lettering. In the later years, the bold Saltair side markings and the vivid colors were adopted to attract more attention. The name Saltair was much easier for patrons to remember than rattling off Salt Lake, Garfield, and Western Railway. Although they only owned 1 boxcar, the Saltair operated a freight business to line-side industries, and they exchanged cars with the larger roads. Parked in front of the electric power plant on the left is the 1 electric freight locomotive owned. Panning the camera around reveals a yard full of the open-air trailer cars used for the pavilion service. 13 of these were built in Saltair's own shops in 1922. This is a nice view of the steel and wood-constructed open-air car. People packed long trains of these in the busy years. Only 1 of these cars survives today. The patronage of the pavilion was affected by the receding of the lake's shoreline several times. Part of the attraction was swimming in the extremely briny water that made even the poorest swimmers float like corks. We'll take a ride west out to the pavilion. This car is turning on the Y, passing the powerhouse. We'll cross the Jordan River and then Orange Street. We're approaching the salt plant and slowing to allow a Saltair freight to take the siding alongside the salt plant. This car is returning east at the other Y located out by the pavilion. We'll continue out to the pavilion and stop to drop off patrons eager for some entertainment. The car will pick up returning passengers and soon head back to Salt Lake City. The Saltair train ride was the warm-up to all the great rides at the Saltair Pavilion. When the lake level was high, the trains ran out over the water on a trestle to the pavilion. The lake had had many other beach parks for swimming and entertainment over the decades. Many believed the water had healing effects from its high salinity. Riding to the pavilion in the evening air, you could smell the salty water Mixed with amusement park foods, you could hear the arcades, the roar of the roller coaster, and its screaming riders. It must have been a pleasant experience, especially on warm evenings riding the open-air cars. They featured dance floors and some of the greatest bands and singers. The dance floor was claimed to be the largest anywhere. It could hold up to 5,000 dancers. Business was surprisingly good during the Great Depression. Even the jobless needed an affordable entertainment outlet. World War II slowed business, and the park closed. It resumed operation again by 1946. By 1926, the Saltair Railway became the owner of the park that needed to be rebuilt after a huge fire. The Saltair's passenger business was tied directly to the pavilion and its patronage. Over the years, the water had been slowly receding from the facility. Bathers couldn't just hop right in the water like in the early days. When the water receded, the dry, salty land that remained often smelled of rotting brine shrimp that hatched swarms of brine flies. They were the only life forms that could survive the high salt environment. This eastbound train leaving the pavilion is temporarily running trailer first. Soon it will turn around on the Pavilion Y to head back to the city. A small battery-powered tram was added to take bathers out to the receded waters, and this is a brief view of its narrow track. Losses to the railroad were mounting. The 45-mile-an-hour service to entertainment by electric trains was suffering from auto travel, and deferred upkeep of the overhead wiring was becoming a problem. The Saltair survived by freight traffic along its right-of-way. This lone freight motor was bought in 1946 from the defunct Salt Lake in Utah. Before then, interurban cars were used to power freight trains. The salt plant coming up on the right was a good source of freight traffic. It was the Royal Crystal Salt Company that became one of the many plants operated by the Morton Salt Company. Salt is used for many industrial and manufacturing uses, as well as being a common item on the dinner table. The drying ponds here produce many tons of salt from what seems like an inexhaustible source. About 30,000 years ago, the lake was part of the massive ancient Lake Bonneville that covered 20,000 square miles over what is now 3 states. 4 rivers and a number of streams empty into this remaining lake, bringing dissolved minerals. Lakes this salty are often caused when water drains into a low area with no outlets to prevent accumulation of salt and other minerals. Electric operation ended here in 1951. The Saltair Railway was glad to eliminate the cost of maintaining the overhead wiring and its elderly collection of electric interurban cars. Scenes like this would be replaced by 2 small diesels pulling a few demotorized cars and the open-air cars. By 1955, the pavilion finally closed from another disastrous fire. This small diesel rail car was bought from the Aberdeen and Rockfish and used in the last few years of passenger service. It was used in periods of lighter passenger traffic. Unlike the other electric lines, the Saltair survived to become an all-freight business. It still operates today, connecting local industries along its shortened trackage. The remaining scenes are from the early 70s. By then, the Saltair served industries with a pair of General Electric 44-ton diesels. The small GE products were first built in 1940 for use on short lines and industrial railroads. Locomotives in this weight class, or smaller, didn't require a fireman under railroad and union agreements. For level track and light assignments, these GEs were a good solution to help keep costs down. The GEs had twin Caterpillar diesels that together produced 380 horsepower. GE had long been a major supplier to the electric interurban world, and this diesel was one of its early success stories in a long climb to build a diesel product line that could compete with the other U.S. diesel builders. The freight operation often reached a 500 car per month level in the 70s. Since then, the salt plant has moved away from the Saltair's tracks. A few other industries have kept the railway going. Industrial growth in the area may bring new opportunities. The bare poles to the right of the track are a dim reminder of the days when everything here moved under catenary wires on the tenacious Saltair.